let's just dive right back into it. Where I left off, I was tearing up this state system for rules. Man, player still isn't even real. For all this time. It'll help when I actually have a human player interface, I think. And I'll know what I actually need to do with it. Right, we got to implement that. I really don't know where this belongs yet. Maybe right here. Okay. While I'm at it, it's time for this to get completely removed from the equation. Like I said, this is a deep tearing up of everything. A lot of stuff is on the chopping block now. It might be all day before it's working again, but gotta try and get through it. I just didn't see the baby steps for this one. So I'm doing the other approach, the I'm gonna have to re-debug everything approach. Okay, so E state is removed from those. State ID is removed from these. From these. This definitely appears to be clearing up something bad that was happening in the code before. See what's happening though, right? Like, this doesn't need to exist. This doesn't need to exist. This doesn't need to exist, right? Because these are all just going to be getting something from state now. And so what if the rules aren't going to need any unsorts on them anymore? Not even going to need a rule pattern. Okay. All of that's just going away together. We're just doing one rule per state from now on. Machine go to array and machine go to aren't even things, right? Right. 3D Factor, hello. I'll show you about what I'm building. Let me close my current train of thought first. RPG name from state, context, machine frame state. So I am working on something that I call the RPG simulator. I'm currently deep in a factorization of the core rules change, so I can't run anything right now to show you. Although there's another half of this project that is currently working. Eventually, I want to plug the simulator, the RPG simulator. The RPG simulator runs little RPG encounters and puts them into larger frameworks like Heroes on a Journey or something, and simulates what happens without any player intervention. It just happens automatically, and then I can use that to like tune up and tweak RPG character designs and sort of measure the ways different pieces of the simulation interact and counter each other. And then the other half of what I've got here is this asset viewer thing that I started that is now pretty much ready to be a 3D visualizer interface for seeing these simulations played out in a sort of game style interface. So I'm trying to wrap up some core some final iterations on the core design here, so that I can thread it together with the visualization, right? I want to start to see my simulations by the end of this week is what I'm hoping for. And I'm hoping by the end of today I will have all the core stuff finally sorted out. Okay, we don't do any of this anymore. Well, originally I wasn't doing it for any reason except that I thought it was fun. I've never actually built an RPG game, at least not all the way through seriously, so I thought it'd be fun to play with programming a turn-based RPG system. And I didn't necessarily mean for it to become a game, but over time it's becoming more and more like it's a game engine that I might build a game with. But even if I don't go that far, yeah, it lets you like design an RPG system. It's not entirely flexible. Like it can't recreate any RPG. It's strictly turn-based, and it doesn't have to be used this way, but it's currently built with a lot of assumptions like that the turns are simultaneous. You and the other team make your decisions all at the same time, and then things work out rather than like I go, you go, I go, you go. You could probably use some of the programming techniques that I'm working on here and build a very different RPG with it if you go deep enough into replacing all the rule scripts. But I don't know. I don't know how far you would want to take that. So for now, my goal is just to turn the simulations into visualizations, and when I get that one step closer, then I'll start playing with it to see if the idea of a game still makes sense, even when I can put things to the test. Like, does this look like it would be a fun flow to be playing along, or is it too redundant and monotonous? Do I need to improve the design before it be a worthwhile game? Yeah, so it's just using pseudo random number generator, so I can run it with the same seed if I want. Um, the I use PCG. I don't know if you ever looked at PCG, but it's just a simple but highly effective random number generator in C. But the part of the point of having the simulation is that I can run it multiple times, changing the seed and get the statistics of what multiple runs look like. If I could have it running right now, I could show you. But like in the simulation code, right, I have it in log mode right now, which just means it does a single simulation and logs it, so I can see how the simulation plays. But I can also say like, let's run 10,000 repetitions of the simulation and count how many characters survived the adventure each time, and then make a histogram the of the run basically over 10,000 trials, right? And so that's a part of the simulation stuff too. There's like histogram mode and a couple other modes I haven't built out. This is like a, this is all in my new folder here, I built a like a 6-week prototype of this project back in December. So most of it was in December and a little bit in January. And the prototype had ideas about comparing and analyzing the simulations that I still haven't recreated. The histograms, as far as I've gone, but I also had like one mode of analysis you could put it into is to give it a bunch of different parties and create a matrix, not a table, but a matrix of that list of parties against itself, and measure which one is more powerful in a head-to-head competition or in a competition in a sequence of like trials, right? And then make the matrix of which party compositions countered which other party compositions, which was cool. And I think it'd be cool to be able to see all that without it being stuck in this interface, but instead be able to actually see it in a space that looks like this. I think would be super cool, because you'd see it play out here if you ever wanted to see it play out, but then you'd also be able to overlay your charts of like, okay, if I put this party and this party together, I can't actually use my mouse, I disabled the mouse. If I have a party here and a party there and I'm comparing them, and then I see charts, but I see the parties fully in graphical detail rather than what I have now, which I can't show you, but it's like a text-based thing that kind of works, but is fairly verbose for representing the actual like compositions of the pieces. Okay. We get the rule from the machine state. Okay, these no longer happen. This and this no longer happen. This is going to be rule from state. Machine next state. We declare it, we don't define it. Go to array. Okay. That also needs to get fixed because that's still popping up in places, even though it doesn't exist. This is saying we want to get the machine frame. If the machine frame is not null, then I want to look at the state. I'm gonna write down your recommendation and to check it out later. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by the nth roll, but I'd be curious to see what you're talking about. I've never really done fancy random number random number management, right? I've only ever done the very basic one where you've got a pseudo random number generator and you grab another number from it whenever you want one. And there's no, besides saving the seed and replaying the sequence, there's no other sophistication there. But I know there are more sophisticated styles of random number generation if you want to, like if you're doing a lot of procgen stuff, that's where I know it is used. But I don't know, there might be other reasons to use it that I haven't seen. Ah, I see. So the PCG library that I use has that feature. I'll show you the one I use. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of good random number generators out there, and that what you're suggesting sounds like it's more than just a random number generator. Random number PCG random number generator. This is a just about the pseudo random number generator. It's got jump ahead and distance, so you can roll things farther down the stream if you want. It's also just it's really, really cool. Yeah, that's kind of what PCG is too. It's a linear congruential generator. I mean, there's this paper that comes with this um uh if you're the type to read a math paper about a algorithm, um paper, I would recommend this paper. I thought this was a super cool paper. Um, do, 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 do. Um, they talk a lot about how uh, pseudo random number generators are statistically tested. Here's the thing about the ability to jump ahead in the stream. Right, this is the part I remember. When you get to this part, there's this idea of like the curve that uh, a perfect true random source, like if this was truly fair randomness, we would expect to see this particular curve. And this yellow curve represents what the pseudo random number generator is doing, which is very close to the same thing up into a certain point, and then it falls off a cliff. Um, because at a certain point, it repeats itself. Is the idea. And there's these other things like the basic linear congruential generators creating these bad patterns that you can see when you map them out over grids. But a good true random number generator looks more staticky like this, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, this paper is where I learned all this stuff. Uh the idea is the linear congruential generator is literally just adding a certain multiple to a counter every time you pull it. So yeah, you can jump ahead 100 by taking 100 times the multiplier and adding that in to the base. And then there's the P is the permutation. After it's got this number that is generated by X plus M times K, basically, it takes that number and uses bitwise arithmetic to permute the bits. Okay, we still have calls to this landing somewhere. Okay, run return handler doesn't. Okay. Right, and this is where we're talking about, does KO check get built in right here as a rule on all post ambles, or does it get built in as a death check mechanism? Kind of seems like a death check mechanism. Um, but I'm not quite sure where the states would be, so let's come back around and try to move this into the death check machine. I don't believe it could possibly be working. There it's not, so you only need one 5-minute break for coder. Okay. Let me think, let me think. Um, where do I want to start? Let's just get here. Look at what we're want to see. Yeah, let's start with the first init. Death result. Journey round. I assume we're getting to a death resolve after this point. Call occurs. Round. Back in here with a death resolve. Then we come in here again. We're still in the death resolve. But this time, okay. Okay, hold on. Are we still in? What exactly is happening here? We know this is where we are reaching to make the call. But do we ever reach this? Do you ever see an exit? Death resolve. 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 So something there isn't happening the way I expect. Death check. Okay. Show me post amble on death resolve. How about that? Resolve. So we're not finding the post amble on death resolve. Okay. Journey round. Death resolve. Are we finding the preamble on death resolve? No. Rule has no hooks. So nothing happens. Okay, so okay, so that's in the initialization code. Death resolve 0. Okay. Rule. It is not post and set pre the rules pre death resolve 0. So yeah, there you go. State from ID. State ID 0. It doesn't like my ID from raw. I think this is the wrong rule symbols. I think this should be state symbols. Those are the ones that actually have a rule in them. So that's the state I want to be. It's that right there is a raw state and a state that should be going through the state symbols. Yeah. Okay. Dot. Okay. So state not 0. Stick that there. Let's move ahead. Journey round. Death resolve. Rule is not 0, so that happens now. Are there any characters dying? No. Okay. But presumably, sooner or later, we will get to this, yeah, and we will want to discard someone. I want to be ready to catch that when that happens. Exit. Okay. Okay, so now we're getting stuck on the thing that makes more sense. So, journey round, death resolve, exit. So we did a death resolve, nothing happened. We went to the exit state. And we still have a rule because now this is set up in such a way that it's an array. So there's a rule for every state. I'm going to need to change this part. That's what's next. 900 in context.c. All right, I'm going to take a 5-minute break here. Be back in a bit. All right. There are only two ways I can think of doing this. One is turn it into a pointer here. And the other is say interesting. Journey round, death resolve, exit, no state. How is that possible? A Fat amount of margin. What's that for? Bad idea. Is I'd love to see. Is there like a file tree? File tree would be cool. Nah, this isn't one. I know. Right, this is different. Anyway, I like making the little loading bar appear. Funny. Um, what am I doing though? Right, I want to debug. Set up the journey machine. Journey round pre. Journey mat round post. Journey travel pre, journey travel post, journey encounter end. So fine. Party needs branch to party goes. That's not a what? Okay, so bum. Right. Bum. Between those two, I want to see this. Doesn't run the default journey round brain? How does it expect it to work? Not, doesn't actually need to happen here. Fair decision comes back. Brain hook. 8-0. Date from entity. Okay, got it. You are out of commission. We don't actually use state IDs in our tile clauses anymore, so that one's out. This is out. Then the only thing I have to do is all the places where I wrote a brain script state, I have to make sure that those things know that they are on party states, not world states. So now you should be able to find that and decide. Counter round. Yeah, so I think on something like this, what I want to be able to do is just say like, beginning of a state like this, set each party's state the equivalent party state. That would mean I did it wrong here. I said set it here, but this is at the end where we're sending them there. We really want to guarantee it's happening here. Okay. Turning around state begins. Turning around preamble. Oops. A breakpoint right there. Turning around postamble. The branches still says 0. So F9, F9. Come here. We still aren't running the bot brain. I get to here for sure. Come in here. Run a bot brain. Brain hook still says 0. State says 8. So default brain state get hook. So the only thing I could think of is maybe I also need to look at the state symbols here. Brain. Yeah, this is a party state symbol, not a regular old state symbol. Okay, that looks normal. At least part of the way. There's some issues, but this is normal. It's at least running to completion on the entity journey state machine. Party 0, party 1. Here, someone actually did get killed. Look at that. This guy took 2 hits that round and got removed and exited from Death Resolve. Round. Here we exited out of the encounter system, so we did not see it as if it were on the stack, even though we should. We will once we fix this, but right now encounters log themselves differently than the death resolves. So the indentation is wrong, but they're still higher up on the stack. When we exit there, we're coming back to the journey round. Okay, so some stuff. I think I want to change. Just to get it out of my head, I want to change the death check thing here a little bit more. I want it to say something like death check code itself already kind of does this. Why don't we say So if we do the discard and then we just keep going, okay, well, are there more deaths to resolve? If there are, we recur to this. Otherwise, we can be done. And the reason there can be is because we require that a character get its death mark here by having its heart be 0 at the beginning of the resolve, so that these moves can interfere with and change the fate of the dying character. And then finally we resolve it. That's the whole idea of this, right? We don't actually remove them until after. And if we remove them, they should be ones that were already dying, because ones that weren't already dying haven't had an opportunity for intervention, and so they are going to go again. But all the processes that can lead to this do sort of have a energy cost in a sense, and the system will eventually get out of this loop and hit this exit state instead. Okay. So now we'll only see death resolves if one of our characters actually drops to 0 hearts. It'll show up here only as many times as it should. I think it would be a lot better. Now this is odd. I don't know what this is about. So next issue here is this thing where the party 1 is still around, and we aren't really doing the right number of. We have a death resolve here. Then we do a KO check to get out of the encounter. This must be another KO check taking over here. Which means I gotta figure out why we didn't drop the party after the encounter. Right, this is exit party 1, sure. Why 1 counter round, death resolve. This is all 1 encounter with 2 rounds in it. After the second one, we exited and went to the second journey round. We couldn't process it right because the P count of the context machine is wrong. Okay. I think we're just about there. I think all of these are out. Okay, I don't like that. We're gonna change it. That will already be visible, so this will be the hook. Yeah. So I'm gonna try something here. I'm embracing the idea that everywhere where I was using the context to directly access p count and p, I'm actually replacing it with a frame, with the idea that you may want to gather this information about frames other than the one that's actually at the top of the stack, for other types of analysis, right? Um, Whether that be for rules within the simulation or just for debug purposes or something. I think that we are developing this notion now that there's a set of active entities for each machine frame, right? In any given machine frame, there's a set of the active entities of that machine frame. And therefore, anywhere that I'm doing things like gathering the set of all moves, what I really am talking about is gathering moves from the set of all active entities, which means I need to know what frame it's related to. Now, I could always just say, whenever I talk about something, I'm talking about it from the top frame of the context, but the moment that I wish I could access a different frame, I'm gonna have to do the same thing anyway, and it's not that hard to do stuff like this, right? Although in a lot of these cases, I already have the machine frame handy anyways, go figure. No, I don't want this. Whatever this isn't quite right. This is out as well. What's happening now is when we want to set the state of the party, we just set it right there. Text. So yeah, no. Yeah, this one, we are very tempted to say that this is supposed to be about what happens during a death check. After everything else, I don't think we're quite ready for that. Looking at it now. Interesting stuff. I don't like that. I think this one we'll just do on top of the stack implicitly. Okay. That went all the way to a journey arrive. It looks like it's about the right length. And we did lose a medic. Looks like they were the only one of them. They were the only one of the adventure party to die, and they can't do emergency first aid on themselves, so it makes sense, you know? If anyone else had been dying, they could have used the first aid kit, done emergency first aid, kept him in. Didn't work out. Didn't work out. Tragedy. But everything's working again. There's a lot of cruft left over from, like, you know, dead code, and just a lot of stuff to clean up after all of that. Okay, so think that's it. I think that was the thing. The death checks are a standard rule. Clean up the state arrays. We now have in the machine frame we have an array of parties and a count. We have an individual state for the machine frame and a separate individual state for each party. I think the first thing I need to do tomorrow is I need to do another pass. Over each of these. So let's do rpg.game.encounter.c, game.journey.c, game.rest.c, game.deathchecks.c. And then I want to rewrite rpg.game.journey.c to call encounter in a way that mirrors how death check gets called. Consider removing the pre-post structure and going to a more free-form update or main loop structure again. Okay. I think that's what I'm going to wrap up with for today. Tomorrow I definitely want to do a pass over all this stuff again with fresh eyes just to catch all the, like, look at this. Here's one. I just want to catch all the stuff that I've ignored, and I'm a little gassed for today. You know, it's been a good amount of work for today, I think. So I'm still not there yet. The to-do list is always unfolding before me. The goal is to, I know I'm ready when I've got everything working in parity with the original simulator again. I want the same characters that I had before, and I'm very close to being able to do that. But I also have the second requirement that I want to feel confident in the architecture of the pieces that I've put on the table so far, and all of these pieces are still fitting together in like half coherent ways. If I were to write more things like the journey, right? If I had another kind of framing in which to spawn off encounters, I would expect it would start to duplicate things that I don't want more of, like the return handlers, and the fact that those work differently from the death check usage of the frame of the, you know, the machine stack. So I want to do that cleanup pass, and I want to get to the point where it feels like the idea of death check here isn't that built in. It is more like a piece of the coding on the machine, and that might involve something like right? Maybe something like that I want to have related to declare rules that are in play. But then how does that square with the fact that I also want encounters to spawn for the journey post amble? Um, yeah, there's all that, and then there's still the issue too of revisiting that language that is used right here. This may actually connect in with this. If I weren't doing pre and post amble, then this would just be the language for deciding how the player is prompted to make decisions. And then you would always have every one of these would have to do like a flow to a next state. And the next state, if you have fixed moves, like in the case of in the case of Journey, there are moves like these where you just get a few fixed options. In a case like this, these get stored into the party state variables, and you would just have like a journey around state here that you flow to that looks at what you decided and decides what comes next, right? And like that's what the post is doing here. That's some code that decides what state is next. Well, we'll see. We'll see. There's still things about the preamble post-amble method that make some sense to me too, so I'm not entirely sure. But that's it for today. I'm gonna sign off for now, and tomorrow I will be back to do more of this to-do list. I think we're close, and I still think we could get to the point of seeing this in this visualizer by the end of the week, but we'll see. The to-do list just keeps unfolding before me, so see y'all around the internet later.